Porn isn't always about sex. Sometimes it's about not needing anyone. When do most people watch porn? Late at night, after conflict, when feeling rejected, when lonely. So is this really about arousal, or is it more about regulation? What if pornography isn't just a sexual behavior, but some kind of attachment strategy? Hey everybody, welcome to the Inner Revolution. If you are looking for real change when it comes to pornography addiction, and really just change in general, dude, then this is the place for you. If this is the first episode you're watching, welcome to the gang, dude. Welcome in, glad to have you. If you are looking for a therapist or you're looking for a coach to help you overcome pornography addiction, then you can look at my schedule down below and schedule a free 15-minute consultation. The best predictor when it comes to therapy or coaching is this relationship right here, the relationship that we have. So that's why the consultation is so important, so we can see if we're even going to vibe, and it's free. So if you are looking for a therapist or you're looking for a coach, go ahead and find a time for a free consultation down below. Okay, so first, let's talk about attachment in general. What is an attachment? Attachment is essentially how we learned to seek safety as we were growing up. So it's how we learn to seek comfort and safety. And this shows up in adult relationships. So it's not like it only showed up when you were a kid. It shows up now, more important than ever. And it particularly starts to show up during romantic and sexual behavior, sexual relationships. There are three main styles of attachment. I was about to say of avoidance. That's one of them. But we got secure, anxious, and avoidant. And there's a fourth one, which is disorganized. We're not really going to talk about that in this episode. We're mainly going to talk about anxious and avoidant. So if attachment shapes how we connect, it's also going to shape how we avoid that connection. So first, let's talk about you avoidant attachment folk out there. Now, I want to talk about what your life may have looked like if you are an avoidant attachment. And if you don't know, then hopefully this is going to be insightful to you. If you don't know if you're an avoidant, anxious, secure, disorganized, whatever. Again, we're only talking about these two, avoidant and anxious. But avoidant attachment doesn't come from bad parents, okay? So if you are an avoidant attachment style, don't just blame your parents. Don't just say my parents are bad, okay? Because most likely that's not true. It usually just comes from emotionally unavailable or emotionally distant or even emotionally uncomfortable caregivers. So they're not abusive, they're not chaotic, they're just emotionally distant. So growing up, you may have had things like emotional minimization. So if you get hurt or you're really scared or you're having these big emotions, right? Your parents might say things like, oh, stop it, you're fine. Or stop crying. Or just tough it out, be tough. They might brush it off and say, oh, that's not a big deal. Or they might even say, you're okay, you're just being dramatic, stop that. So the message was never, your feelings don't matter, right? It was more of a message of your feelings are inconvenient. So over time, the child's going to adapt. Now again, you could have had the best parents in the world. They gave you all the food you want, you had all the best clothes, they went to all the school events, all the things. But when you felt hurt, rejected, afraid, ashamed, overwhelmed, your caregiver may have changed the subject, offered solutions instead of comfort, or became irritated, or even started to withdraw from the situation. So as a child, you would feel or you would learn that when you have big emotions, you're alone. And in these families, there can be a huge rejection of dependency. So these families have a really big value of independence. So your family may have said things like, oh, figure it out. Don't rely on other people. Handle it yourself. Big boys don't cry. Don't be needy. All of those things. Now, there's no ill intent in any of these. It's just this big emphasis, this value on independence. So when it comes to pornography and avoidant attachment, there are a couple of the factors that you might be, a couple of the reasons you might be going to porn is because there are things like no rejection. And so if you have an avoidant attachment, right, as you grew up and you had these big feelings, these strong emotions, things like stress, anxiety, fear, rather than being vulnerable with people, right, you grew up hearing things like, oh, brush it off, or don't worry about that. So you don't have to worry about rejection when it comes to pornography, right? You're not dealing with a real person. That porn, that screen, that video, that picture is not going to reject you. There's no emotional risk, kind of in the same vein there. There's no performance anxiety. There's no negotiation of needs. There's no exposure of any type of insecurity. So with porn, you never really actually have to be known to be stimulated. So it's the perfect solution, not the helpful solution, but it's I guess you could say it makes sense. It's a solution that makes sense when it comes to people that have an avoidant attachment style. Because people who are more avoidant, they use their independence as armor, right? And they use their self-reliance as safety. Like, I'm independent. I can do this myself. I don't know why I just started like puffing my chest here. I can do this myself, right? Or I don't need anybody. I don't need no one. I can just do this myself. And ultimately, they use this emotional distance as safety, because growing up, getting emotionally close just really wasn't a thing for them. So porn becomes a way to meet this need of connection without actually activating attachment anxiety. Now let's jump into you anxious attachment folk. If you have an anxious attachment style, your life may have looked like this. It may have been loving but inconsistent, warm but unpredictable, emotionally available sometimes, and other times not so much. So the key word here for anxious attachment is inconsistency. The child grows up never fully knowing, will you be there when I need you? So sometimes your parent or your caregiver was attuned, affectionate, engaged, responsive, but other times they were more distracted, overwhelmed, depressed, preoccupied, or emotionally dysregulated. So the child learns, I have to amplify my signals in order to keep connection. You also may have felt that your love was conditional or that it was performance-based. So you may have experienced praise when you achieved something great, or you may have been given attention when you start excelling at things, like when you're doing really well in school, or you received warmth with a compliment. Or you may have felt warmth when you were compliant. There you go. So this message becomes, I need to perform in order to maintain this closeness that I have with my parents. And this doesn't have to be subtle, or this doesn't have to be explicit. Most of the time, it's really subtle. So when it comes to this anxious attachment style and pornography, you might be using pornography to calm this fear of abandonment, to hyper-focus on things like sexual validation. You might be using porn after a perceived rejection, or using arousal to soothe some relational panic that you have. Sometimes porn isn't used to avoid connection. It's used because connection feels uncertain. So the classic cycle for someone with an anxious attachment style looks like this. You feel insecure, you seek artificial reassurance through pornography, you feel shame, you feel more insecure, and you get the process. And the reason we're not talking about this third attachment style, a secure attachment style, is most of the time, people who do struggle with pornography don't have secure attachment styles. They're not secure in their own relationships. They're not secure with who they are. Now, if you do have a secure attachment style and you do struggle with porn, that can be a reality. I'm not going to go into that this episode. I might in a future episode, And so if that is you, if you think that you do have a secure attachment and you feel really great in your relationships and you're open about everything and you still struggle with porn, then comment down below and let me know. And I'll be happy to make an episode on that and the different things that can be causing that. So most of the time, people who do struggle with pornography will have the anxious attachment style or be more avoidant in their attachment style. Now let's talk about porn as an emotional regulation tool. I want you to really think, when is the last time you watched pornography? And thinking on that situation, what brought you to PMO, porn, masturbation, orgasm, okay? What brought you to that? Were you really stressed? Was it after conflict? Were you really bored? Were you feeling inadequate? What feelings or emotions did you have that led you to start thinking about porn? Or that led your brain to saying, hey, what's this emotion that we're feeling here? Let's get this out of here and let's go watch some porn. Porn can be a soothing mechanism, especially with all of the uncomfortable emotions that can come up if you do have an avoidant or anxious attachment style. Because think about it. Porn provides predictability, control, an immediate mood shift, and a neurochemical comfort with things like dopamine and opioids, all of those things. Those are things that really everyone wants, but particularly the people that are more avoidant and anxious. But the reality of it is, the truth is that real connection requires risk, and porn only requires Wi-Fi. So I want you to think about this week. What are you actually looking for when it comes to pornography? What pushes you to PMO every time? Is it consistent? Is it a consistent emotion? Or is it all over the place? What is it? So next time you PMO, when you open your browser, when you go into incognito mode, I want you to think about what you're looking for. Are you looking for comfort? Are you looking for validation? Are you looking for escape, power, distraction? Are you looking for a relief from shame or a break from responsibility? Are you looking for a sense of just being wanted, being seen, being heard, being loved? Now, I promise you, if you just give this some thought, you'll find it. You'll find what you're trying to actually seek. You'll find what you're trying to find. But the problem is, most of us don't think about that stuff, right? Especially if this is something that you've been struggling with for a long time. It's just automatic. You're on autopilot. And so pump the brakes a little bit. You still PMO. I'm not saying don't PMO even. Okay, you still PMO. But either before or after, really give it some thought. Think about what you were trying to seek. And do this every time. And eventually, as you start to train your brain, as you start to make it relearn certain patterns, you'll start to think about the things that you're trying to fulfill or find before you PMO. And that can create this buffer in between stimulus and action, right? From the time you get a trigger, from the time you PMO, we're just trying to create a bigger gap between the two. And the bigger that gap is, the more time, the more choices that you are going to have to choose a different outcome once you have a trigger. And in this gap that you've created, there are different things that you can start to do, right? Different tools to surf that urge, to surf the wave, and that can lead to a better outcome, that can lead to a different choice rather than to go watch porn. So if porn is an attachment strategy, recovery isn't just about stopping behavior. It's about building security in your relationships with other people and with yourself. So there are a couple things that you can do and that I recommend as you increase this gap from the time you trigger, from the time you get a trigger to the time you PMO. First is to increase your emotional awareness. And that's what the pausing does, either before the urge, before you PMO, or after. Pause and ask yourself the question, what was I trying to find? What was I trying to fill? And you can start to label what you feel before you act. So rather than saying things like, oh, I'm just horny, you can say, no, I'm lonely. And then you can pivot to make a value-based action and to turn towards your values to see what you can do to not be lonely anymore. What do your values say? You can also start with something called micro-vulnerability, because odds are you're not very vulnerable with a lot of people in your life, especially when it comes to addiction. So you can send a text to a friend. You can admit some insecurity. You can initiate affection without any type of expectation. Then you have different nervous system regulation strategies like cold exposure, breath work, movement, journaling, all the classics that I'm sure you've tried, and maybe they've worked and maybe they don't. But the key here with all of this is to find something that works. And then, of course, it's really helpful to create a safe community. And that's what this inner revolution is, man. So there are people on here listening every single day who are just like you. And so eventually we're going to have things like a forum page and stuff like that to chat with everybody, which is going to be sweet. But in the meantime, if you don't already, find an accountability partner. Find someone that you can talk to if you do PMO. Find somebody that is just going to be a listening ear without any judgment. So that could be things like men's group, therapy, a faith community, if that aligns with your values, whatever it is. But addiction thrives in secrecy, man, especially when it comes to porn. And so the best thing that you can do is drag it out into the light. And you can do that by joining any type of community or just telling someone. You don't heal attachment wounds in isolation. They heal with other people when you're together. So maybe the question isn't, how do I stop watching porn? Maybe the question is, how do I feel safe with someone? And that includes yourself. And remember, dude, you're not weak for wanting connection. You're human. You're lovable as you are. Your value is 100%. Nothing can change that. The revolution isn't just about quitting porn. It's about learning how to attach in healthy ways. It's learning how to love yourself and other people. And that all starts right here in the inner revolution. So thank you guys for listening. If you got this far for real, go ahead and like and subscribe. I'm supposed to say that if you found this video helpful, go ahead and share it with somebody. Comment, subscribe. If there are different topics you'd like me to cover, go ahead and let me know as well, and I'm happy to cover that just for you. Okay, you guys rock. Peace, love, and life. I'll talk to you later.